Welcome back to my garden. Another week's rolled by, so time for some musings. This week I found myself mulling over the myth of Sisyphus. You're probably familiar with his punishment. It's often spoken about. Sisyphus was the king in ancient Corinth, and he was punished by the gods in a rather appalling sort of way. He was condemned to push a rock up a mountain, boulder, every day for eternity. At the end of each of those days, he would watch it inevitably roll back down to the beginning, have to face up to his onerous task once more the next day. Ghastly. And it's easy to see why this has become, of the Greek myths, one of the go-to favourites of YouTubers around the world, because it does seem to capture the spirit of our times. You know, a world where the bullshit job holds sway, the ubiquitous, pointless activity that we find ourselves having to do day after day after day, trying to earn money to buy stuff that we don't want, to impress people that we don't like. I've certainly spoken about it quite a lot, and many others have as well. What's perhaps less well known is the full story, and in fact it is less well known. There's a few versions, it would appear. My brief trawl through the netherworld of the internet, there's a few versions of the story, but essentially it seems to be this. Sisyphus was a clever, albeit rather naughty king, and not once but twice he tricked the gods, tricked death. Once chaining death us up, so that he could go free when he'd been punished by the gods for some major indiscretion. And the world actually was quite glad, because for the time that death was chained up, well, life went on rather merrily. So there we are. Sisyphus annoyed the gods and was cruelly punished. But in a way, he had the last laugh. And the French existential writer-philosopher Albert Camus, I think if I'm not mistaken actually Algerian French, and also a goalkeeper, although what that has to do with anything, I'm not sure. Other than to suggest that if he was a goalkeeper, he clearly was a man with the taste for the absurd. And that's one of the ideas that he sort of wrestled with, and one of the reasons why this myth seems to be so popular, because as Camus saw it, it was it cut to the very heart of our existential problem, that we run around searching for purpose and meaning in a universe that is oblivious to our very existence. And ultimately, whatever we do, we're going to find ourselves in a grave. And very quickly, however marvellous our achievements or generous our actions, they will be forgotten and not even the stuff of distant memory, just gone. So that seems to be, as Camus saw it, the embodiment of our crisis, that we live searching for meaning where none is to be found. And Sisyphus, it would appear, his solution was to embrace the act. Okay, I'm condemned for eternity to push a boulder up a mountain. And at the end of every back-breaking day, I get to watch the boulder roll back to where it started from. But that is what I will enjoy. And to hell with you, the gods. So, in a sort of strange way, if Sisyphus learnt to enjoy pushing the boulder up the mountain, well, he had the last laugh. And I suppose, certainly, many of my fellow YouTube essayists have reached the conclusion that this gives us a good idea about how we should live our life. We simply embrace the banal, the mundane, the pointless. And we just enjoy it. We settle back and find beauty in it, however ridiculous on first sight it might seem. And that's pretty sound advice. It's one way of dealing with the extraordinary crisis that many people will find themselves in when searching for meaning, or if you take it out a little bit further, in our quest for self-actualization. What does that mean in a world where perhaps nothing has any meaning at all? There's another way, and I suspect I've spoken about this before, but it certainly bears repeating, and it's sort of what bubbled up into my consciousness during the week. There's another way of looking at this, and another route out. It is that perhaps we are condemned to push the metaphorical boulder up the intimidating mountain. But if that is all we have been condemned to do, perhaps we are able to choose our boulder and choose the mountain. And perhaps if we push the metaphor a little bit further beyond breaking point, we get to push occasionally, subtly, different boulders up different mountains. And that perhaps is a way out of this dilemma. If we're continually being forced to push a boulder up a mountain, but the scenery is changing, it no longer becomes Groundhog Day, albeit a physically tormenting version. It becomes a perpetual holiday. Pushing the boulder is the price you pay for the extraordinary views of that unfold in the mountain range. Now, what made me think about all of this is that I've been coming to the end of my own personal short to medium term little boulder, the Large Head Study. And I've reached a point, I shared it recently, a short clip, not very easy to see it, but I've now reached a point where essentially it's finished. I think there's a little bit of tinkering, and I'm willing to give a number of hours that I'm prepared to spend, because in my OCD charting of literally every hour that I've spent, to the nearest 15 minutes if I'm being honest, making this enormous head, and it is enormous, 3.5 meters. I've recorded every minute that I've spent doing it. And at the point that I've reached now, which is essentially finished, I have spent 996 hours. 246 on 246 different days. So over the next 4 hours, I plan to spend an hour each day tinkering, and then I will call it done at a very round 1,000 hours and 250 days of work. And it got me thinking about that, because it has been an enormous undertaking, and for anyone engaged in creative endeavours, at the end of it, you have a feeling of emptiness, because your boulder has very much rolled down to the bottom of the mountain. You have to start all over again, and it's if there's an initial euphoria of getting to the top, you are afterwards filled with an enormous feeling of dread of the work that you know that you're going to have to do to make the next piece. But it does strike me, and in concluding this piece, that I think that perhaps the answer to the Sisyphus conundrum is that we must try not just to embrace pushing up a rock up a hillside. We must instead push an enormous boulder, as heavy as we can possibly bear, up an enormous mountain. This is a different solution to the problem. Rather than just gently enjoying repeated versions of the same sort of banal everyday reality, let's try and embrace doing something that is extraordinary. And when that's finished, do it all over again. You know, it struck me that 225 days, well, it's about 7 months, allowing for breaks, 8 months. So I can probably produce 3 of these large heads every couple of years, or something the equivalent of it. And then thinking about that, the mountain range in front of me becomes an extraordinary body of work. And so I think that perhaps is one of the ways out of this problem. I mean, not to downplay the importance to embrace the everyday and the mundane, to embrace the process. But if we can perhaps choose our territory carefully, and we do not live in a universe as mysterious as it might appear, I don't believe we live in a universe run by Greek gods. So I think we have at least that much agency. And indeed, even in the mythology of the Greeks, Sisyphus managed to trick the gods not once but twice. And if Sisyphus can do it, why can't we? I think we can. So that's it for this week. That's what I've been thinking about. Choose your boulders carefully, ladies and gentlemen. Pick beautiful mountains and embrace the toil. Otherwise, when you're dealing with those mundane, everyday trivialities, I trust you manage to do so filled with joy. And until next week, from very sunny Brazil, ciao.